Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. I'm your host, Hannah MacDonald, and I'll be bookending the conversation with some of the most exciting voices from the bookish world. On today's episode, I am so excited to be joined by Lily King, author of one of my favourite books, Writers and Lovers. She's here to discuss her latest novel, Heart the Lover, which is out now, and links to grab your copy are in the show notes for this episode. Lily is an award-winning writer based in Portland, Maine. She's the author of 5 novels, including the New York Times bestsellers Euphoria and Writers and Lovers, and the story collection 5 Tuesdays in Winter. Her stories, essays, and reviews have been featured in numerous publications, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, Vogue, and the Los Angeles Review of Books, to name a few. Her novels have been published in 20 languages and have won numerous prizes and awards, including the Kirkus Prize, the New England Book Award for Fiction, the Maine Book Award for Fiction, a Whiting Award, and a MacDowell Fellowship. Her latest novel, Heart the Lover, is a deeply moving, epic love story that unbelievably is only 250 pages long. It's a raw and intimate exploration of love and loss, desire and regret, grief and yearning, and I am so delighted to be joined by Lily today to chat all about it. Welcome, Lily, to A Pair of Bookends.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm so excited to chat to you. Before we dive into you and your work, I would love to start by asking what you're currently reading.
I am reading Our Evenings by Alan Hollinghurst, and I am loving it so much. I just don't want it to end.
I've heard so many great things about this book. I really need to add it to my TBR.
So good.
Okay, have you read much of his work? Are you a big fan, or is this? Yeah,
I've read most of it. I'm a big fan, huge fan.
love that. I haven't read any of his work yet, which needs to change. But yeah, I've been seeing Our Evenings everywhere, so I'm very excited to get to that. But let's get into your work. As I said, I was a huge fan of Writers and Lovers. It massively resonated with me, as it did for many people I've sort of heard on various book podcasts. I just thought you represented one, the experience of working in a restaurant so well.
Have you done that?
Yes, I worked in hospitality for a decade and it was traumatic, but it was also amazing. It was a great education for me and made so many friends working there, and it was a great job to see me through, finishing school and college and university, but it was intense at times. And yeah, I just thought you represented that experience so well, and especially a creative trying to build a creative career whilst working in hospitality, and how how much of a struggle that can be.
It's really, as you said, it is really a great education. I feel like nothing prepared me as well for a book tour than my years and years of working at restaurants and serving big tables where I had to make long, long speeches about
Yep,
the specials and everything else. And it teaches you so much
it does.
about kind of developing extroverted skills.
Yep.
Your tips in our country anyway, your tips depend upon it. And so your livelihood depends on you figuring out how to be sort of gracious to people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so interested in the difference in the tips system. It always intrigues me about the US and how that works. But I think still, certainly here, I know in the US, I think waiters and waitresses and servers are paid a little bit less because it's expected that your tips will kind of pay you. But here we still are fighting to try and get. It's definitely not an amazing wage here, and we're still, doing our very best to go above and beyond. Even if somebody's incredibly rude to you, you just have to bite your tongue sometimes and be like, I'm just going to have to take this. And I remember really strangely once, this is a really random aside, but I'm an actor and I had a vocal coach for a little bit, just working on my voice, not working on singing. And she said, it sounds like you've got like a block. Like, I can't remember how she phrased it, but she said, like, how often do you hold back from saying things? And at the time I was working in restaurants, I was like, all the time. I was like, I work in restaurants. And she was like, that's really impacted your voice. And I thought, how crazy is that? Like, how much of a strain it can actually have on your vocal cords. And she said it's an actual thing of people that work in jobs like that, where they hold so much tension here.
Oh, that's so fascinating. And
Yeah.
also, mean, if you've ever been to, like, I don't know, someone who's doing some sort of spiritual body work or healing work, that's your truth chakra right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember someone suggesting that I sing in the car because it was so tight.
Wow.
But it's just wild, isn't it? That
Yeah.
is a nation of very, very serious repression, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't expect to be talking about this with you, but I absolutely love it. But the other thing I wanted to say about Writers and Lovers is the way that you portrayed, yeah, trying to build a life as a creative, and it's a book that I definitely want to return to because I'm 30 now and I was a few years younger when I read it and it resonated with me so much then and I feel like it still will now because I still feel like, I'm not at the place that I would like to be in my creative career. And I think, I wonder, I'd love to ask you actually, if that feeling of you've got to panic about the next thing coming along, if that stays or if it goes at a certain point, yeah, what's that like for you?
Uh, I mean, there's always a little bit, I guess, of panic about the next thing, but there's also lot of excitement too.
Mm,
I spent a long, half of my 30s feeling the way the character feels at 31 in Writers and Lovers.
yeah.
It was a long process for me of kind of, getting to the part where I actually published a book. I mean, my first book came out when I was 36.
Hmm.
So I was still waiting tables, up until age 34, I think. And it's, I think we really have to think of our life as, always evolving,
Hmm.
always changing. So I was talking to an old friend of mine, about our kids in their 20s, and I said, I just want them to, do whatever. Like, I don't want them to get trapped in some job that they don't like, but they stay in for the next 30 years, and I really just want them to explore, and when they're in their 20s. And she said, whatever their year, whatever their age, you
Hmm.
know
Yeah.
they and it's so true. And part of that is, it's taking risks, and it's not conforming, and it's not doing what everyone else around you is doing, because they're making choices based on stability and security.
Yeah.
And when you're a creative person, that stability and security is not going to be forthcoming all that
Mm.
quickly. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I find it so strange, this obsession with us needing to have completed certain things or achieved certain things by a specific age. There's a lot of, 30 under 30 lists, or there's, you'll read somebody's bio and it's like, oh, and they did this by this age, and it's the age thing is really celebrated, and I
yeah,
just find that so odd.
I know, and precociousness is so celebrated, and youth, and I know it's quite exhausting, especially when you get to be my age.
I mean, you've done it all. You're doing amazing. Your career is just wonderful, and I'm completely in awe of everything you've achieved. But we should get into your latest book, because I have so many questions about it, and I honestly adored it. And I have this weird thing where I cry a lot at TV and film, but I don't really cry at books, and I don't know what that is. But this is one of the only books to have made me cry. And I really cried reading this book. It is so beautiful. But could we start? Would you mind giving your sort of elevator pitch to the listeners of what Hot the Lover is about?
Sure. Well, it starts off with our main character, who has no name at first. We don't know what her name is. And she goes on a bad date with a smart guy, and that's sort of the catalyst for the next 30 years of her life. And
Hmm.
the first section is set in college, and during that year, and actually the next sort of 6 months after that, and gets herself into a love triangle, and slowly gets herself out. And the relationship with these two men really reverberate for the rest of her life. What the conversations that they had,
Hmm.
the things that she felt. Doesn't end up with either of them, and yet in the third part, they all return to a particular place and a particular moment, and it's very intense, and all these things sort of play out that have been withheld or unexplored or unacknowledged. And it's really a book. This is hardly an elevator pitch. It's a long elevator.
I'm loving it.
Really a book about love, and all different kinds of love, and how love for one person can really change throughout your life, yet still be so important. Sort of interested examining that and examining how time affects us all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you write about love in such a beautiful, moving way. And I do want to ask you about that, but I want to start by asking you about the opening line, which I know has been a favourite for many, which is, "You knew I'd write a book about you someday." And I just thought that was such a great opening. It really hooks you in immediately. And I'd love to know what you think makes a great opening.
Openings are really important to me, and I get really frustrated when I haven't found it right away. I mean, often with my books, it's what I start with. It's like a sentence that for me means a lot,
Hmm.
and I can go from there and I can build on it. This one didn't come to me right away. I started in that classroom scene. Somewhere along the line, I'm not really sure. Maybe I was 10 or 20 or 30 pages in, that came to me, and I think I just sort of wrote it in the margins of my notebook that I was writing in, and then I sort of played around with it, and then I lost, and then I just kind of gave it up for a while. And my when my editor saw the first draft of it, it wasn't even there. And then when she saw another draft, she was like, "What is this?" And she was really excited about it, which I was glad because I don't know. There's some part of me that was like, "Isn't this been written before?" You know, it just sounded so natural to me that I felt like surely it's been written before. But I do think I need to love the beginning of a book for
Mm.
me, keep going with it. And I want it to offer something that, you hear the voice loud and clear,
Hmm.
voice that will be the voice of the novel. And it does pull you in somehow. So a friend of mine said that the first few sentences of a novel should grab you by the collar,
Hmm.
and kind of yank you close and not let you go. So I don't know. I don't really like have that. That was a guy, of course. So I don't really have that like physical thing desire, but I see his point.
No, I love that. I think you absolutely do that. I was immediately drawn in, and I loved that first page. It was just like, I think it's like 4 lines or something. It's so short and so punchy, and yeah, I was immediately drawn in, and I was like, oh, okay, I want to know everything now. And I feel like by the end of the novel, I was so kind of, I needed to take a minute after I'd finished because I was so at a loss that like I wouldn't be with these characters anymore. I felt like I really knew them. They felt so real to me. And I would love to know, when it comes to writing characters, do you write a lot about them prior to delving into the story, if that makes sense?
No, I don't write about them before I write the fiction in which they appear. I have to think initially I have to get to know them by writing scenes
Hmm.
and by just throwing them in. And then sometimes I'll often have a character or two or three that I'm just not getting. And if that happens, then I usually open up a file on my computer. And I always write by hand at first, but for this, I'll write a file on my computer and I'll just start, "I was born." And I'll write in the voice of that character, even though it's not often the character who's telling the story. I'll write in first person and I'll write, "I was born," and I'll write their maybe 10, 15 pages of their life story right up until the novel begins. And so I just have a real sense
Yeah.
of who they are and where they came from. And I'll make up all kinds of fictional things. And no one's going to see it. And
Yeah.
so I can just really let myself go. And the critic doesn't step in any way. It's just like this very, very creative process that is so helpful sometimes. With this, I didn't do that. With my novel Euphoria, I very much did that for all three characters. And
Oh
it was
wow.
it was like the meat of everything about that book was from those three autobiographies that I wrote.
I really felt like I knew these characters, and it was the same with, is it Casey in Writers and Lovers? Am I right in thinking that? Yeah.
Yep.
I felt like I really knew her as well. So they just feel so well fleshed out, and these stories feel so, I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, the characters feel so lived in. And like I said, I miss them already, and I didn't want to let them go. One thing I would really love to ask you is, I think part of the magic of your writing style is how you're able to say so much and are able to make the readers feel so much. but in such a short space of time, like I said in my intro, this is only 250 pages long, and I felt like I'd lived a whole life with these characters. Is that something that you've kind of learned over time, stripping things back, or has that always been your style?
Really good question. I think it's kind of always been my style. I do think my first novel was definitely slower and more descriptive. And whether it was really more descriptive of characters, I'm not really sure. I mean I sort of draw my characters with dialogue. I feel like that is my way of knowing them and showing them to the world is really through what they say to each other. And then I often have an interior voice that's narrating one character, and so then we have access to that character, and then our access to the others are really through dialogue and through
Hmm.
our observations. I don't know if it's an impatience. I don't know what makes me write like that, and I really would like to take my time more. I would like my next book to be longer. I would like to write a book where, people spend like a week or 2 weeks with it, and not like I get a lot of text right now. I read it in one sitting. I read it, and I'm like, great. It took me so long to write this book. And I appreciate it because I mean, I love the feeling of whipping through a book and just, being all consumed by it. And I love that people might feel that about one of my books. But at the same time, it's a good feeling to kind of live with a book for a week or two and really start to feel the world the way that narrative feels the world. And so I would like to do that too, but I don't know if that will really change the way I create characters and define them for the reader.
Yeah, you mentioned dialogue there, and as an actor, I'm feral for dialogue. I love it, and I'm always seeking it out in novels. And I thought you wrote brilliant dialogue. Have you ever written for film, TV, theatre?
No,
No,
no, I've
would
never.
you?
Possibly. I would really like to write a play. I would like to take a playwriting course and then write a play.
I would
But
love to see a play written by you.
I love dialogue. I love dialogue more than anything. I can't imagine just writing dialogue and not having to write all the moving people around and
Mm,
all the other stuff that you have to put in. I
yeah.
just it's so exhilarating to write dialogue.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I have written for theatre a few times and have so enjoyed it. And I'm now working on my debut novel, and it was such an adjustment.
Yeah, I know. I know.
I was like, what do you mean I can't just write a load of dialogue?
I know you have to get them across the room. You have to get them in
Yeah,
the car. Oh, I know.
it was a
You have to
lot.
groceries. There's just all kinds of things you have to do.
So many
But
moving parts.
I'm glad you're writing your first novel. That's awesome.
Yes, it's very exciting and scary. I would love to ask you as well about, obviously I mentioned Writers and Lovers before. I'm going to try not to keep mentioning that book, but I did love it so much. But obviously within that book, your protagonist is trying to become a writer, and it's about, navigating that lifestyle. And yeah, it's a real struggle at times. And then obviously in this book we have writers in this book, and it was so interesting to see them at the start, where they're at college and they're working on it, and it feels so fresh and exciting, and then how that might kind of change as you get older and how your career kind of progresses. I'd love to know what you think it is that makes writers such compelling characters.
Oh, that's funny. When I wrote Writers and Lovers, my agent was like, nobody wants to read about writers.
We do.
Well, I think writers, and I was like, I do. And she's like, yeah, you're not our demographic. So I do think other writers like to read about writers
Yeah.
sometimes. I don't know. So I don't really know if people do, but and I never meant to write a book about writers, and let alone two. I have done it, and I think writing about work in general is something that is sort of underestimated in the writing world. I think we all like to read about work,
Mm,
and but not in like boring, monotonous ways. But I think it is an interesting topic, And I remember writing about when I wrote Euphoria and I was writing about anthropologists. Many people wrote me and said that they loved reading about their work, you
Hmm.
know, and I think that maybe gave me the courage to write about waitressing because I think before then I thought, well, people don't want to read about that. But there is, I don't know why, I don't know what it is about that exactly that is pleasurable to read about, and you're learning something
Hmm.
if you haven't done it before, and even if you have, so it's some, I don't know, I find that can be engaging for some reason, and then I also love a book that starts one place with a particular dream, and then you see how it played out.
Hmm.
You know, this book, jumps 30 years, and you can see, okay, this is what happened. And I find that very satisfying.
Yeah, and I think I've especially found it with other creatives in my life, whether they be actors or writers or whatever, and them kind of wishing that they could look into the future and see if they kind of quote unquote made it. So I think I found this really enjoyable, to see how excited she got about, the possibilities that might come to her. And I think a lot of our youth is about, the possibility and what could be in our future, and getting to see how that works out is actually so, it's just such a nice thing to see. Yeah, it's really not rewarding, but similar to that. It's really
Yes,
nice to know that things work out. Reassuring. It's reassuring to know things work out.
yes. Well, I had this very strange experience that was really, I think, one of the first or second sort of mystical experiences I've had in my life, and that was when we moved into this house about 6 years ago. And when I was unpacking this study that I'm in right now, I came across a workbook that I had done in my early 30s. I had taken a class like through my insurance company for anxiety because I was having so like Casey in Writers and Lovers, I was
Hmm.
having so much anxiety um, about 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 work, about my love life, about my health. Um, there were all these things. I mean, my family. There's just all these things that kind of came at me at once and just brought on this extreme anxiety that I'd never ever felt before. And so I went to this class for about 2 months, and I got this workbook. And in the workbook, I flipped through it, and there were all these questions, and I had filled out one part of it, and it was something. It was like a grid where where you are and where you would like to be, and I had written about how I wanted to be an accomplished writer. And I was writing my first novel. And I remember it said accomplished writer. And then in the thing, how you'll get there. And it was something like I understand that, to reach this goal, it takes years and years, and I can't give up. Or I can't remember what I said to myself, but and I sat out on this little couch we have outside this door with this thing, and I saw my writing. I knew the pen that I'd written in because I still have it. It was this fountain that I bought when I got my after my first shift of my waitressing experience in Cambridge, where I was writing this thing, and the pen was a fountain pen. It was kind of expensive, and I just treated myself to it.
I love
And
that.
I was writing with that, and I had this experience of all I can say is that it kind of felt for like 3 seconds like a portal had opened up, and I was able to go back to that person, my old self, writing there and tell myself it would be okay. I just had never experienced anything like that before. And I've never, since then, I've had two equally mystical experiences. But I don't know. I really feel like I was able to reach myself and tell myself at a really difficult time, just hang in there. So I just
Oh
want
my
to say
God,
thanks.
that is beautiful. And I needed to hear that today, so thank you. That is really beautiful. I love that so much. I do want to talk, you mentioned before about love, and it is such a big theme in the book. And I love how you explore the intensity of it and how all-consuming it can be. And your protagonist at one point says, I am so in love with him, it is hard to take a full breath. which I think if you're lucky to experience love at some point in your life, you will understand that feeling. And I just adored the way you wrote about love. I have no other way to describe it. But much later in the book, she's been interviewed about the way she writes about it herself, and there's a discussion about whether love is a form of hope or not. And I'm curious whether you think it is.
Oh, definitely. Honestly, I mean, I think it's our only hope. If we don't love each other, and if we don't hope that we can find love, and not just romantic love, but just love that connects us and
Hmm.
binds us. We're going through such a terrible time in our country right now, and people are being removed from the
Yeah.
streets in very violent ways and
Hmm.
taken to places that their loved ones don't even know where that is. And if we can't look at those videos and hear those stories and feel love for those people that we don't know, but who are innocent, who have left their war-torn, very difficult lives in their home to come here and have gone through all the legal channels, and then we have this lawlessness in our country. I just There are so many ways in which we need love right now,
Yeah.
and I have to believe in it, and I have to believe we will survive this, and we will survive all our challenges, and the only way we will do it is by not losing our ability to love each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've articulated that so well. And I think, it's a real concern of mine that there are so many people in power that aren't leading with love. And I think that's really harmful, and it can
Yeah.
have a huge impact as we're seeing. I'm really concerned for the things I see online, in terms of I think I'm in quite a nice bubble and echo chamber where, most people I know would never want to hurt anybody, would never want any harm to come to anybody, no matter what background they have, where they're from. The people that I know and love just want to give love to others, and to go online and see that there's actually, people out there that don't move around the world in that same way is really frightening. And you're right, we need to we need to remember that love is the most important thing, and we need to love each other and look out for each other. Yeah, I think it's really important that you mentioned that.
And we have to understand that the people who are not feeling that, who are sort of allowing their hatred and their kind of baser instincts to take over, they are being groomed by
Mm,
they're being they're this is a very active money making scheme
yeah.
that is happening to them. It's not just a natural expression of, some people being full of love, and, some people not able to feel that. It's this active brainwashing that is happening online,
Hmm.
and people's loneliness and isolation is being taken advantage of and increased.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking that people in power, in all kinds of different kinds of power, are not um, doing more soul searching about the effects of this, because it's so clear now.
Yeah.
Gotta
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. It's definitely something that's becoming, I mean, we're seeing it a lot in the US, the treatment of immigrants there, but it's definitely something that I'm seeing a lot in the UK now, with the kind of growth in the Reform Party. And yeah, it's just so wild to me that there's people that, I'm from a working class background, but there's people from a similar background to me that truly believe that it's people coming here from war-torn countries that are taking things from them, and it's not. And they're saying, like, we don't want you here. And I'm like, it's not them that you need to be angry with for the position that you're in. It's not their fault. Yeah, it really
And
worries me.
and politicians are just using this issue for power. It's
Hmm.
awful. They know
Yeah.
themselves it's not true. It's just a terrible, terrible power grab.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's return to love because
Okay.
that's what we need. What inspires you when writing about love?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, my great loves are my husband and my two children, and I feel like I draw so much on them and those things that I feel for them. And I definitely reach back to my old self in those those early years of infatuation and falling in love and falling out of love and
Hmm.
heartbroken. And it's funny how from this perspective that all really interests me, because it was so new and we were so sort of defenseless against it, and the highs were so high and the lows were so low, and the intensity of the experience was really so beautiful. And I sort of draw on all those emotions when I write about love.
And I love reading your writing about love. It made me feel so much. And yeah, I just thought it was really powerful and incredibly moving. And like I said, yeah, I felt like I loved these characters and I knew them by the end. I also want to ask you about, I mentioned that there's themes of loss in this book, and I do like to keep things spoiler free, so I will tread carefully. But you deal with a lot of illness and loss, and I suppose grief in your work. How does it feel for you to write about those things and sort of face them head on? I think I asked that because I am so afraid of death and of loss and of all those things. So I suppose it would be a real challenge for me to try and face it head on like you do.
Well, I mean, I really feel like that is how I get through the losses in my life, is writing about them. That's how I get through the fears in my life, writing about them.
Hmm.
It's definitely my way of letting it sink in, and I get some relief from that, putting that all down. Certainly with Writers and Lovers. After I finished Euphoria, I started on another novel. I actually gave that up, and then I started on another novel, and that was going very well. And then my mother died very, very suddenly at the
Sorry.
beginning of 2016, and I couldn't write for like 8 months. I just sort of wrote in my journal, and I never ever opened that notebook again of the novel that I was writing. I have no idea. I have no idea why exactly. It
Hmm.
didn't, it was about a son and a mother. It was in 1900. It was nothing. I had no interest, none. And then when I did start writing, I started writing the first scene of Writers and Lovers, and and I knew, within the first paragraph, her mother has died,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, finally, like I could take this 31-year-old woman, and I could give her the loss of a mother, and I can write this. This is what I can write, and it was just felt so good to write that book and say all those things, but in a fictional way. It wasn't about my mother at all, but it was about my emotions about my mother.
Mm. Yeah, it's really interesting the way those things appear in our work and the way those things show up, and you might think that you're exploring something totally different, and actually
Yeah.
you realize where it's actually what the root is. There's a really powerful scene in Writers and Lovers, and I know that my friend that I read Writers and Lovers with at the time, she'd lost her mum and she was really struggling with her grief at the time. And she found that Writers and Lovers really helped her. It really helped us navigate that grief. So I know that she'd want me to thank you for that.
Yeah, well,
But
thank her. Oh, goodness, that really means a lot to me.
but there's a really powerful scene, and it really resonated with her, and it's just something small. I think Casey just, I can't remember why she wants to ring her mum, but something happens and she goes to ring her mum and then realizes, well, remembers that her mum isn't there anymore. And it's hard to explain, how horrendous that is as a feeling. But I think you articulate it beautifully, because grief is something that shows up, and I know it's a really annoying thing when people say it comes in waves, but it shows up in ways that you don't expect, and I
Right.
think that's the really powerful thing about that emotion.
Yeah, and in that moment, she was happy. Like she was having like a little wave of joy, and then immediately she's like, I have to call my mom. And then I
Yeah.
realized that happens for a long time. I feel like your impulse and your subconscious, has these ideas, and then you have to remember, oh yeah.
It does. There is also a moment in this book, and I couldn't believe it when I read it. And I'm not going to name names because like I said, I don't want to give any spoilers. And if you want me to take this out of the podcast, I absolutely can if you think it's too risky. But there's a moment in this book you mentioned before about these mystical moments that you've had in your life. But there's this sort of mystical experience that a character has in this book where they're holding one person's hand but feel somebody else's hand. And it's very strange because my nana has told me so many times that when she was holding her mum's hand on her mum's deathbed, the hand changed to an old man's hand, and she knew straight away it was her dad's. And she's
Oh,
told us this story so many times. And when I read that paragraph in your book, I was so thrown by it. And I took a picture and I sent it to the family group chat and I sent it to my nana. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like Nana's told us about this so many times. And it was that exact, it was so surreal. It was so strange.
oh, I've heard of that. That happened to me, and
Oh,
I've never heard
wow.
it happening to anybody else ever.
Oh my gosh. I couldn't believe it when I read it. I was like, oh my God, I need to tell my nana right now.
Wow, I had no idea. Like that's so amazing. That
Yeah.
had happened to me when my mother-in-law was dying like 2 years ago. And so I wasn't at my mom's deathbed because she died very, very suddenly, like on an island in the South Pacific.
Oh
She
my
was on
gosh.
and so I just, I heard about it after she had died. And I mean, that's just one thing that I always wish that I had had. I wouldn't have wanted to see her suffer, and I wouldn't want her to
No.
suffer. And she had such a beautiful death, very fast, exactly where she wanted to be, where she had always wanted to go. And so I know it was like a perfect death for her. And for me, I really wished that I could have said goodbye, and I wish that we could have had conversations. I mean, there was really nothing left unsaid between us, but I
Hmm.
still always missed that. And so then when my mother-in-law was dying, she was dying over the course of several weeks, and the day she died, in the morning, I was left alone with her briefly, and I was holding her hand, and the hand literally changed to my mother's hand. It just, I looked down and I saw it was still my mother-in-law's hand, but my mother-in-law was sort of tall and thin, and my mother was, kind of shortish, and she had kind of like, kind of pudgy little hands, for her size. She was
Mm.
slender, but she had, real padding on her fingers, and it was just felt different. And I felt in her, I mean, I just felt it was her hand. There was no other way to say it, and I couldn't understand it at all. And then after a few minutes,
It
it came
changed back.
back.
It's
It
the
felt like she was coming and giving me that experience. And she had died, 7 years before.
mm. I mean, I love hearing stories like that because I really hate to think that when we're gone, and there's no kind of connection with with
Yeah.
people here, and I think it's that I'm so afraid of loss and of death and all those things that's why I really struggle with the fact that there's no more afterwards. So stories like that really comfort me. And yeah, my nana's told me that story so many times because it was such a comfort to her in that moment that her dad was there for her and, was saying it's okay. And yeah, she's told us that story so many times. So when I couldn't believe it when I read it in your book, but it's just really beautiful that you shared that. Thank you. I do want to finish by asking a few bookish questions. I hope that's okay. I mean, I want to talk about there's a moment in the book where your protagonist's advisor at uni, you wrote, quickly understands how limited my reading has been and how male. And you talk about how she feeds her various female writers. And I'd love to know if you were in place of the advisor, who would be the female writers that you would be encouraging this character to read?
Good question. Probably similar. Of course, I can't remember that list exactly, but it would be hard for me not to advise her to read all the female writers that I feel so passionately about. So definitely Virginia Woolf,
Mhm.
Toni Morrison, Shirley Hazard, Tessa Hadley, Doris Lessing. I don't know if she's on that list or not. Yeah, of course, Jane Austen.
Mhm.
More contemporarily, um, I mean, that's plenty of them are contemporary. Oh, Marilyn Robinson. I loved Susie Boyd's Loved and Missed.
I need
And
to read this.
that, uh, Elizabeth Strout. I love Jenny Erpenbeck, German writer. So many, so many. But
So many. You've done very well to remember all of those names.
Sigrid Nunez, I love her work.
Yes, great. That's a great list. There is another bookish question I want to ask you. So there is a writer that is mentioned a few times in the book that I think is a fictional writer that you've made up. I think he's called Ray Hart. Yeah. And she talks about finishing one of his novels and knowing after reading that she wanted to go away and write a novel herself. Is there a particular book that did that for you?
Well, I mean, it happened probably when I was 7 or 8 years old, and it was two Judy Blume books. Really, it's not the end of the world, but also Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Those two books really did that for me, at a very, very early age. And I mean, later on, definitely Salinger, and then much later on, Virginia Woolf. They
I
all
love that.
same sort of thing. And Shirley Hazard, The Evening of the Holiday, did that for me very much too.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Did you like the recent adaptation of Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret?
That was great. I thought it was great. Very surprisingly fantastic. Because, it's so hard to do something like that.
Yeah. There was an interview that I listened to with you. I think it's called the Book Speech and Beyond podcast, but I could be wrong. But it's a great podcast, and I will link it in the show notes in case I've forgotten what the actual name is. But they mentioned how you're often referred to as a writer's writer. And I, I wasn't sure when I heard it if that is meant as a compliment, but when I heard it, it sounded like it's a compliment. It sounded like you're well respected by other writers and they look to you for your passion and your craft and all of those things. So I hope that I've not just brought up a really offensive term that it is.
Not at all. I mean, there's nothing like, getting a note from another writer who's read your book and liked it. I mean, especially if someone that you have read for a long time and kind of worship, that's a really great feeling. And I love the idea of being known as a writer's writer. I mean, the only sort of, I don't know, if you take this as an insult, is just that you probably don't sell a lot of books, if you're a writer's writer. It's kind of the implication, like, only writers are reading this person.
No,
Um,
surely not. I mean, I've seen your books everywhere, so surely it's that's not the case for you. But yeah, you're obviously well loved by other writers, which I think is a wonderful thing.
Such an honor. I mean, that is, if that is true, that is such an honor to me.
I love that. The question leading off that I wanted to ask you was either what would be the best piece of writing advice that you've been given, or what writing advice would you give to other writers?
I mean, I hate to, I've done this before and I will
Oh,
do
I'm
it again.
sorry.
I don't know. I just feel bad that I'm repeating an ad slogan, but really it's just do it.
Yeah.
I just feel like you can make a million excuses and you can delay and procrastinate and say not this week but next week, and you just have to sit down and do the work, and you have to schedule it into your day, and you do not deviate from it, and you just have to get it done. There's no other trick. It's discipline. It's 98% discipline.
I love that so much. Thank you. Before I let you go, Lily, I'd love to finish by asking for a recommendation for our listeners. Is there anything that you've enjoyed recently that you'd like to recommend?
Yes, I just read My Friends by Hisham Matar.
Hearing great things about this.
So good. It is so perfect. I loved every second of it. I'm recommending it to everybody.
I love that. That's a great recommendation. It's been so lovely chatting to you today, Lily. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I absolutely loved Hot the Lover, and I'm so excited to chat to more people about it. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much, Hannah. And I'm so excited to come to London in October.
Yes! Oh my gosh, okay. I need to find out what these dates are and I will pop event dates in the show notes. Amazing. Thank you. So, where can the listeners, sorry, find you on social media, if anywhere?
I'm on Instagram
Amazing.
a little bit, but probably I'm on Facebook too, but really just what I post on Instagram goes to Facebook. I don't really pay much attention to it. And I'm on Blue Sky, but I have like, 100 followers and I hardly ever go on there, but I'm going to try to get better now that this book is coming out.
You've got this. I'll pop links for those in the show notes also. And for our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to review and subscribe. And if you want to give us a follow, you can do so at A Pair of Bookends Pod on Instagram and at A Pair of Bookends on Twitter and TikTok. Go give Lily a follow and go buy her books. You will not regret it. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you again, Lily. Goodbye.